That's not a line from a TV show. That's the United States government in a criminal indictment describing insider trading at one of the most successful hedge funds that has ever existed. The fund paid $1.8 billion, the largest insider trading penalty in history. One of its traders went to prison for 9 years, and 3 years later, Showtime turned it into billions. Here's what most fans never find out. The show barely had to invent anything. The hedge fund king, the crusading prosecutor, even the psychiatrist on the trading floor. All of them are based on real people. This is the real case behind billions. And once you know it, you will never watch the show the same way again. Start with the man the show calls Bobby Axelrod. In 1992, a trader named Steve Cohen left the brokerage where he'd made his name and started his own fund with $25 million. He called it SAC Capital, his initials. Over the next 2 decades, SAC put up numbers that made it a legend. Roughly 30% average annual returns, year after year for 20 years. At its peak, the firm managed around $16 billion, and Wall Street called Cohen the hedge fund king. To be clear about how absurd 30% for 20 years is, the greatest investors in history struggle to hold 20. Cohen's returns weren't just good. They were the kind of good that makes people ask questions. Now, the disclaimers because they matter. Bobby Axelrod is not Steve Cohen. He's a composite widely considered to be modeled on Cohen and SAC, with a fictional 9/11 backstory and a fictional personality stapled on. The show's creators, including financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin, built a character, not a biography. But the fund, the structure, the culture, the appetite for edge, that's where fiction and reality start finishing each other's sentences. Inside SAC, traders reportedly sorted information into categories. Public information, earnings reports, news, that was white edge. Worthless, because everyone has it. Questionable information, the gray area, gray edge. And then there was the thing you weren't supposed to have, the clinical trial result before it's announced, the merger before the press release. And in the summer of 2008, one SAC portfolio manager found the blackest edge of his life. His name was Matthew Martoma. He ran a healthcare portfolio at an SAC division with $400 to $500 million in buying power, and he had built a massive position in 2 pharmaceutical companies, Elan and Wyeth, that were jointly developing an Alzheimer's drug called bapineuzumab. If the drug's clinical trial succeeded, those stocks would soar. So how do you get an edge on a drug trial? Officially, you do what's legal. Read the published research, model the science, handicap the odds. Unofficially, there were expert networks, firms that, for a fee, connect traders with doctors and industry insiders for consultations. Martoma arranged dozens of paid consultations, including, and this is the part that became a federal case, with one of the trial's own principal investigators. In July 2008, the doctor saw the confidential results before the world did. The trial was a disappointment. And here's where one phone call becomes the most expensive 20 minutes in Wall Street history. On Sunday, July 20th, 2008, Martoma called Steve Cohen. They spoke for about 20 minutes. Nobody outside that call knows everything that was said on it. What we know is what happened next. Within days, SAC reversed its entire bullish position, liquidating roughly $700 million in Elan and Wyeth before the trial results went public. When the results were announced, the stocks cratered. SAC had not only dodged the losses, it had flipped short. Total benefit to the firm, roughly $275 million in profits and avoided losses. Federal prosecutors would later call it the most lucrative insider trading scheme ever charged. Martoma's bonus that year, $9.4 million. For a while, it looked like the perfect trade. But the government was already pulling a thread, and the way they pulled it is exactly the playbook you've watched Chuck Rhoades run for 7 seasons. In the show, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York is Chuck Rhoades. Undefeated, 81-0. In reality, his name is Preet Bharara. Appointed in 2009, he became the most famous prosecutor in America. Time magazine put him on the cover under the headline, "This man is busting Wall Street." The press called him the Sheriff of Wall Street. His office racked up roughly 80 insider trading convictions, many against hedge fund traders. The exact crusade Billions dramatizes. And his method is the show's method. You don't spear the whale first. You start small. Analysts, feeder funds, cooperators, and you climb. Flip the small fish, work upward, and build toward the firm everyone's actually watching. By 2013, 8 current or former SAC employees had been charged with insider trading. 6 pleaded guilty. The investigation had climbed the ladder all the way to the king's door, and there it stopped. In November 2013, SAC Capital, the firm itself as a corporation, pleaded guilty to securities fraud, paid that record $1.8 billion penalty, and agreed to stop managing outside money forever. Steve Cohen was never criminally charged. Read that again because it's the single most important fact in this entire story. The firm pleaded guilty, the man did not. The SEC brought a civil case, not for insider trading, but for failing to supervise Martoma. Cohen settled it, neither admitting nor denying the findings, and accepted a ban on managing outside money until 2018. 2 years. No fine. Now the editorial part, and I'll flag it as opinion. The legend of the Sheriff of Wall Street deserves an asterisk. Bharara's real record wasn't 81-0. An appeals court overturned 2 of his marquee convictions and forced 7 more to be dismissed. Critics like ProPublica have argued hedge funds were the safer target all along. Insider trading cases are winnable, while not one senior banker went to prison for the 2008 crisis itself. And when it came to the biggest whale of all, in the words of those critics, the Southern District blinked. They got the firm. They never got the man. Chuck Rhoades gets 7 seasons of war. Preet Bharara got fired by tweet in 2017. Reality doesn't write satisfying endings. Which brings us to the man who paid for all of it. Matthew Martoma went to trial in 2014 and lost. 9 years in federal prison. The $9.4 million bonus clawed back. His conviction was appealed and upheld. At sentencing, the judge mentioned a detail from Martoma's past that tells you everything about who the system caught. Years earlier, he had been expelled from Harvard Law School for forging his own transcript. A faked credential, a brilliant career built on top of it, and one trade too far. If that arc sounds like prestige television, that's the point. The writers of Billions didn't have to invent their morality tale. The Southern District filed it as evidence. And the 20-minute phone call, it remains exactly what it was on July 20th, 2008. A phone call. 2 men spoke. One went to prison. The other, well, let me show you what happened to the other one. In 2014, SAC reorganized as a family office called Point 72. Managing Cohen's own $11 billion fortune, he hired an army of compliance officers and reportedly spent over $100 million on surveillance software that screens his own traders' emails for red flags. The Fox built the henhouse alarm system, and to be fair, it's apparently a very good alarm system. January 1st, 2018, the ban expired. Point 72 opened its doors to outside money again. Today it manages roughly $40 billion, more than SAC ever did. And in November 2020, Steve Cohen paid $2.4 billion for the New York Mets, a record price for a baseball team. Approved by the other owners, 26 votes to 4. So here's the final scoreboard of the biggest insider trading case in history. The trader, 9 years in prison, bonus seized, finished. The firm, guilty, fined $1.8 billion, the largest penalty ever. The founder, never charged with a crime, richer than ever, managing more money than ever. And he owns a baseball team. That is the story Billions is based on. And now you know why the show could never quite end the war between Axe and Chuck. Because in real life, the war didn't end with a verdict. It ended with a season ticket. This series is called Billions Explained. Over the next 5 weeks, we're going inside the show's actual finance, the trades, the tactics, the tools, and sorting what's real from what's television.